because my maths is crap. So there are a couple of spare lookers. Right. So we need some lookers over there. You're a looker? You two lookers?
No, I'm a sitter, but I'm just standing.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, we've only got one.
One looker. You can look again. Yep. Trish wants to be a looker. All right. So gather some. Yes, she is. Gather some disciples. All right. So has everybody who hasn't looked got two people to look at? And if you need to be looked at, just attach yourself to a looker. All right. Who is unassigned? Have you looked, Priscilla? All right. Priscilla needs two people to look at. You can look at Joel. All right. Who still hasn't got someone to look at? You can go over there. All right.
There's two in the toilet.
You're not rolling. You're not rolling. You're sitting. Not rolling. I forbid you to roll. Rolling is forbidden. Oh, look at them there. As soon as I say you're not allowed to do it, you do it. So naughty. I bet you were good and now you're naughty. Ah, you're exploring the range of goodness and naughtiness. Okay. So the thing that you're going to look at, and now this is upping the ante a little bit because you're going to do it on your own, that's fine. You can cope, can't you? Keep breathing, breathe through. The people on the floor are going to sit and hold your feet like you just were. You're not going to roll. And you're going to simply lift your right foot up and take your left knee to the floor. So it's not a dissimilar movement to what has been observed, but it's that simple right foot. So that you're going, and then your weight will shift to take your left knee to the floor. Oh, everyone's doing it so nicely. Actually, lookers, you're going to have a hard job picking what's the difference between the two. And looking at the timing, looking at the orientation, looking at where the movement is happening, where their head's going, what's happening to their pelvis. So they don't have to go all the way down onto the elbow, just onto the knee. Otherwise, it's too complicated for the people to look at. So just so that, yeah, that's it. All right, and then when you've picked some things that are uniquely, what makes Leone and what makes Martina, you can use some language to guide Martina to be more like Leone, for example, but without telling them what you're doing. And remember, the first iteration, you can just use language however you like. But you can be sort of sloppy, directive, or whatever you want. All right? And it might be something as simple as, because everybody's head, for example, is going through space a little bit differently. Ah, oh, see you. Lovely to see you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
It's lovely.
Really good. It's lovely. Lovely having you in the group, actually. See you. Safe travels. Yeah, no, just to the knee. Yeah, no, you're allowed to. So it could be which bits initiate. It could be the movement through space. It could be the timing between segments. Could be where the eyes go. Could be holding the breath. Could be where they land. You could go in that direction if they allow you. They might, yeah, because they might want you to because the other person's doing it, or they might not want you to. Ooh. Okay, so now if you've turned one person into the other person, you could do the opposite. And now the constraint for the instructions is that only asking questions. So no instructions, no directives, it's a question. And remember, it's not simply having a rising inflection at the end of the sentence. Is it? A question, yeah. A question isn't just going, is it, at the end? Going up at the end? Like that. Okay. So transform person B into person A, as it were. So, yeah. The people on the floor, you don't know who's turning into who. You could be turning into a frog and you don't know it.
So, how would it feel if you began movement by lifting?
Yeah, you could go the other way. If you're getting bored, people, you could go the other way. Yep, if that gives you something more novel to look at.
What is the relationship between your eyes and your right? Your eyes or your right? What happens in the rock onto your left?
Oh, you done? Would you like to try some hands-on? So for Speedy Gonzalez people, now there's no language, and you could, if you feel like there's still some part of the person that's not involved in the movement, or that maybe, you know, is a little bit less clear to them? Could your hands be this kind of illuminating force? How would you have to, so you just can, the other, you don't have to work with two people, obviously, so the other person can look. See, I'm losing my language, it's just going. Yeah, just use your hands. Use your hands on one person, if you're curious. My back craves to do this lesson. It's so hard watching it and not being on. I just want to be on the floor.
It feels so good because I really wanted to watch them too. But
no, I just want to have my back rolling all nice and have my chest all nice and soft.
my shoulder's been really horrible and all these things.
Oh,
This big
yeah.
shoulder, and that one, it's just like, oh, no. It's good everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe just why, just, yeah, I need to feel this.
Barbara must be deaf because she often gets quite muddled. Anyway, yeah. What's he got there? Unless Trishy's got to do something weird. It's fussing on my God. About helping you understand teaching ATM and what do you look for when you're looking for differences? So what are some of the obvious things that were different in people? Sort of a weird question, but because if you look at too much detail, you'll get swamped, right? Did you feel that? You go, oh my God, well I know they're different, but there's just, I don't know where to start. Did anyone have that experience when you're looking? So what do you do in that moment where there's just so much you could pay attention to? What did you do? What did you look at? How did you simplify it so that you could see some concrete differences? You could look at initiation. What did you see?
I think initiation is very important.
Can you give us a concrete example though? Sorry, what did you see in the people?
For some people, they want to start with their head or eyes.
Yep.
For some, it's from their pelvis.
Yep.
So if we really look at that beginning initial point, we can have a little bit of idea.
Yeah. And why this idea is good is and we'll talk a lot more about when you're observing people, maybe you've already done it, you've discussed this a little bit, is that you look with fairly soft eyes. You know, so you've all done some ATMs where you look with soft eyes, and if I can really bore in at Trish and really look at her, or I can kind of, you know, literally soften my eyes so that I see all of her, and then it's particularly my peripheral vision that'll pick up movement. So actually, if I really don't stare at her, but just sort of look, I will see the movement where it initiates much quicker, right? That's just a visual thing. Yes, so soften your gaze, and the thing that moves most on your little retinas will catch your eye, literally catch your eye. Yeah? So initiation's a really good thing, the thing that moves first. Yes, what else? What other strategy, Deborah?
Well, we saw a lot of discomfort in her natural way of doing things, so we tried to take that away. And
was it truly discomfort, or you were projecting?
No, it was discomfort and a lot of bracing, and we ended up changing the move quite a bit, and she found it so much more ease with the final move. Yeah, and you could see the breathing, the holding of the breath, and everything, the face, and struggling to get around. So
and was it hard to find language? Didn't say, oh gosh, you know, you're doing it really badly?
No.
Great.
No.
The person didn't feel corrected or wrong?
I don't think so.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, good. All right, so it's that idea of, can you be comfortable with somebody else's discomfort? You know, like not panic about it. Go, oh my God, what are they doing? And, you know, go into projection. We just hang with their discomfort and work with it in that same kind of way, right? Because if you buy into this, you buy into their pain, buy into their discomfort, then you're both in there and you're both lost in it. So it's like, okay, stay in yourself. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's one of the traps for young players, is that you get too caught up in their own thing. And if you stay in your observational, supportive kind of teaching, facilitating, learning mode, you won't go into that, you know, oh, let me fix you mode. Good? Yep, what else? Pick a body part. Pick a body part. Just start with something. Start with something. You know, the eyes and the head are good, pelvis is good, ribs are good, sternum's good, nose is good. Pick a body part. Yep. Like, just make it doable. If you can't see it, you know, if you're getting lost in the detail. Trajectory, yeah, and trajectory of the body part, yeah, really good. Or you can get this overall, you know, some people kind of look at flow. You know, some people really see flow very well. Maybe it's that peripheral vision again. They see where you know, there might be a kind of aspect to the movement. So the trajectory and the roundness of the trajectory can really catch your eye as well. So start noticing what you're noticing when you're looking at people, and then you can play around with these other strategies, right, to make it containable and not be overwhelmed. Now, the other good news is that we are really, really, really wired up to see people's differences in movement. It's just now you're trying to put it into language. It's really hard. And my evidence for that is, you know, even if you don't know me very well, if you saw me across the street and I was walking, you would know me now, because you know my walking pattern already, probably, without knowing that you know it, right? So we have this really inbuilt kind of capacity to recognise movement. And the hard thing now, of course, is that we're bringing that up to the consciousness and putting it into language. That's the hard thing. So actually tell yourself, no, I'm really hardwired to see this. And, you know, I'm hardwired to see asymmetry. So there's this theory that the more symmetrical people are, the more we find them attractive. So facial symmetry is a sign of beauty. And there's all this kind of evolutionary theory. That's how we choose our mates, based on their symmetry, because then we'll have good babies with them. You know, have you heard that?
What about if you're drunk?
You're drunk, yeah, then beer goggles. Beer goggles, everything's off. And all those rules fly out the window. And you see symmetry and beauty where there is none. Avoid the drink, yeah. Perceptual distortions. Though Feldenkrais just has a rant, and one of these things is when you fall in love, you don't see the imperfections anyway. So love is the sort of Yes, very biased. So we are, huh? You have to like their tonus.
You have to check for it.
Check. Oh.
Tonus, baby.
Now there's a line that would not win. How's your tonus, baby?
What about?
Yeah, not moved at all. Can I check your tonus? No. Thank you. Sorry? Oh, there's groups of women. Yeah. So, and that asymmetry, like you will pick up when someone's got a limp, right? You know, you can pick it up really quickly, right? You might not be able to describe it or say why or do, but all of you would pick up, if someone was slightly asymmetric, and we pick it up immediately. You'd see that there's an asymmetry. The skill is in seeing, which body part it's in and what's the timing of it, and putting it into language. So really trust in your innate ability to notice movement, right? We are really good at observing movement. You're just maybe not confident in it. Yes?
Julie and Di are fantastic to walk behind.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly when they're carrying their lunch, their little bags. Everything is identical. The swing and everything.
Has Di got the hip thing as well? Really? Really? I've never walked behind Di. I've had dinner with Di, but I've never actually walked behind it. Oh, that's so funny. They are very twins. Yeah. Have I got a twin?
That's why I always run out of here. Simon.
Oh, yeah, my asymmetries. So, yeah. I mean, in asymmetries, you don't feel it in yourself, right? So, after I finished uni and I was working, I had a big car accident, smashed up my pelvis and my hip. And I didn't care because I was going overseas, so I just ignored it and rehab myself and pissed off overseas within like months of having it. And I was working in London, and I was walking down the corridor, and this physio behind me said, I've been there for weeks, and he said, I have to ask you, but why do you walk like that? In that tone of voice, like, why do you walk like that? I'm like, what? Because I thought I'd done this beautiful rehab job and I was fine. And and he showed me. I can still do that. The asymmetry, and people will laugh at me at work and say, you're doing your thing. And I'm still not quite clear in my own visual kind of imagery what I do. So it's interesting. So, these things are there. So mine comes and goes, depending on how tired I am.
Yes.
We know, we've checked.
Yes.
Okay. What else do we need to say? So any other comments, questions about this observing people, and then seeing when you're looking at people, and the other thing that you can kind of have in your mind is what is missing? Like, where can I see their blind spot? Can I see the bit that's not moving? Right? And that's where things start to get a little bit, people feel like, because you might sort of say something and they'll become aware of a body part because you can see that they're not. Have you had an experience of that? What do you see when someone's not aware of a body part? How does that manifest? It might be a stiffening of it, or it's just not involved, or it's lagging behind, or dragging along.
When they become aware of it.
Oh, when they become aware of it.
Oh.
Yeah. There is a real light bulb.
Yeah.
And so your words can illuminate a part. And they might even go, duh, like that. Like, why didn't I think of that? But that's the whole point of ATM. And if you go and put your hands on it straight away, it's not such a big, it might be an aha, but then they'll attribute they'll thank you for it. Whereas if your words help them find it themselves, then they get that sense of, have you all had that experience?
Yes.
Right? And now you really understand now why we use our hands in ATM, but it's not the first thing, right? We see if we can use our words first.
way to find out people that don't know what they're doing is go to a park where a lot of people run.
Ah,
And,
yeah.
you know, I've done it many
Yeah,
times,
yeah.
and they'll be running like you will not believe.
Yeah.
And everyone is different.
Yeah,
But if you were to tell them,
yeah,
they say, oh, I don't do like that.
yeah,
But, again, but,
yeah,
if you take a video,
yeah, show them.
say,
Yeah,
this is the way you run.
yeah,
They say, no, I don't. So,
yeah. So you can, yes, you can do that. So one of the practitioners in Adelaide used videos a lot. She actually used them during FI as well. And there's something, so there's a seeing is believing, and there's also a feeling is believing. So to link those two is really important. Any other observations about that exercise? Things that you found interesting or things that you found really frustrating? It's not a kick it.
There are blind spots. Like
Yes.
there was a blind spot for me.
Yes.
For this being absent.
Yep.
And I can't see that as well because that's my blind spot. I can't see in her.
Ah, you couldn't see somebody else's blind. Ah.
So if that's
Okay.
missing, even in the
Yeah.
ATMs when we practice as a body, at, you know, during the segment, between the segments, even the instruction I missed few instruction because they were my blind spots.
Yeah.
So
this is great. This is great. This is why you do 4 years of ATMs on the floor yourself.
And every
right?
time we do it, every time I practice the same ATM, something else comes and then something else comes.
Yeah. And how many traditions are there across all cultures where it's know thyself first? Not really. No. Like you'll see a very famous interview with me on the 7:30 report where I go, I've just wasted the last 30 years of my life working with people with their eyes shut, and now everybody has to have their eyes open. That was a different context. Sometimes visual can help, like when you're stuck, but it's a little bit like using your hands. And seeing is believing. You know, there is that. There's something about seeing yourself in the mirror, though, and we've been looking at this in some of our research projects. Is mirrors? You see what you want to see in a mirror.
Yes.
That's what we've decided, is that we're so culturally used to mirrors that people often don't see their blind spots in the mirror because they see what they want to see. They see their big nose, they see their hair, and they're looking for is my bum big in this? And you go into that whole kind of habitual seeing with the mirror. And we're exploring with this because it's a big question in one of our research projects, is because we've got a different feedback system that's visual versus just using a mirror. And mirrors are not always very useful. I'm happy to hear other thoughts. Yes.
I feel like if you're looking in the mirror to say point or something on your foot when you're doing something, the way that you see, you might it's like an external thought that you do to yourself. You don't think about how you're doing it inside yourself as much, and then it's only later that you realize you did some weird thing to do that, but you got the look that you wanted, but you can't function as well in the movement. Whatever.
And there's something about you have to orient to that image. Like that, you know, and you can't actually use your eyes. So there's a whole bunch of things how you want to look. That's what we reckon. That's how we reckon. We reckon there's this whole aesthetic, cultural crap going on with mirrors. That doesn't happen as much. Like in a video, you can't mess with it because you can't respond to that cultural ideal, maybe.
Well, recently I've actually stopped some of the people I work with actually using the mirror.
Yeah.
Because it's like with a lot of things, what I'm finding or my understanding of it is that this visual takes over, so they stop feeling.
Yeah.
They look and go, okay, it looks okay.
Yeah.
So they stop feeling what's going on.
Yeah.
I had recently a young woman I was working with, and her form is brilliant. But when we're working on really tiny. No, we're working on. Well, I've been working with her for 3.5 years or something. Yeah. So we're working on really, really small things now.
Yeah.
And she has this little tiny bump when she squats. It's a little, goes out a little bit. It's very small now.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get her to feel it.
Yeah.
And got her to put a blindfold on. As soon as she went down and came up, she got it. I had another guy where I couldn't get him to feel his lower back. Put a blindfold on him. One squat down. As he went down, he went, oh, that's it. And as he came up, he went back down and corrected it through that feeling. Yet doing it in the mirror, he couldn't see it, couldn't feel it. As soon as we took the eyes out, straight away.
Yeah, look, I think, it's worth playing with, so, and it's worth knowing that the mirrors have this ideal business happening. And there's a lot I see gyms advertising, ladies' gyms, guaranteed no mirrors. And I think, that's really interesting. I think it's for that reason, because people go in and this cultural norm thing kicks in with mirrors. So there's this thing that ladies' gyms, we don't have mirrors, so you don't, get obsessed with seeing what you look like in Lycra. I mean, I think some people should look in the mirror when they're wearing Lycra and go, no, not for me. But anyway. Yeah.
I find sometimes the visual towards myself, like seeing myself, can help clarify as well. So if I'm not clear of what my trunk's doing, like the feeling of it, to feel it and then just see it to help clarify.
And then go back to the sensing? Yeah. So this is where you can you can play with it a little bit. It's about knowing where your addictions lie. And if you have to see things all the time, that's not a good thing. If you can play between the two and use them to reinforce or modify each other, that's the cleverness. And the more we're understanding around sensory understandings is that it is multimodal. So meaning that we use multiple senses all the time. So this sort of thing that, I always use visual, this, that and the other. There's this we looked at a whole bunch of papers where if you test somebody's tactile sensation, so their sensitivity to touch, if they can see an image of the arm, they are more sensitive to touch. So this is where we kind of, one of the reasons why, I'm laughing about always having your eyes shut, because sometimes that multimodal thing, and, there's a lot of different theories about why the brain is like that. So it's not that I'm seeing the touch, I'm seeing the body part. And that somehow having that multimodal priming of the brain makes me sense. So, I can contradict myself a million times over with senses, but that's the state of play in the current thinking around senses, that we just don't understand it. It's far more complicated than we thought.
I found with dancing, because when I see myself in the mirror, I can see what is wrong, but I can't rectify it. But when I see it in a video, I can almost feel it.
Yeah, mirror is different to video for sure.
It's totally different.
Yeah.
Like when I see myself in the mirror, it doesn't connect to actually, it's like a logical process almost. While looking at the mirror, at the video, I can, it's...
One more.
I just hate videos and of myself. And so I think there must be other things, like we used to think photographs were real and now we know that they're a construction. To me, videos, I don't know what it is. It is a two-dimensional representation and it distorts to me. And, I don't know what else.
So the thing is, in a way, we don't need to worry about it because we don't use these things anyway. We're about training, the interoceptors and what people use to augment that outside of things. You can play with videos, mirrors, and understand that everybody has these very different responses to these images, and it's all got to do with self-image as well, how you respond to images of yourself. And I'm fascinated with this selfie business, this kind of, that everybody now wants to take selfies and what that means in terms of people's response to their images and what they want to look like, and, all this. I just find it fascinating. But anyway, getting back to the observing the ATM, are there any other questions about thinking about the sequences that I've kind of coerced you through in the last week or two? Anything that's still standing out for you going, what the hell was that about? Like, what's that got to do with the price of eggs? Or is it all, can you see, feel, sense there is some kind of method in the madness or madness in the method? Anything else that you just...
Can I just say something interesting about mirrors and videos? I wonder to myself whether the reason that we feel that it's strange looking in a mirror is because your right side is actually projected back at you on the opposite side, whereas when you take a video, it's a true representation of where you imagine your body is and where it is in space, whereas a mirror is the opposite. So it's strange.
There is that too. The flipping of the left and right. Yeah. And if you're more used to a mirror, seeing a video is really off-putting, and especially if you are quite asymmetrical. And again, the visual feedback that we've been using is not a mirror image, it's a real image. And people really go, oh, that's very weird. Anyway, so yes, it's an important point because we are asymmetrical, whether we think we're not or we are. Right, last chance to ask about any of the bizarre things that you've done. Rolling on the top of the head makes sense today? Having your head be able to soften forward and back, that clarification. Yes?
That clarification.
Huh?
That's the one I stuffed up because I could see one person doing it and then not knowing how to, I learned by not doing it well, how to ask a question with my hands.
Okay. All right, doing that. Yep.
And how to ask the question in the wrong way.
Oh.
And having somebody feedback to me that was the wrong way to ask that question because it didn't help me clarify. That move clarified, or that hands-on touch in that location clarified. That one actually didn't clarify, and it stopped me.
Right.
So it was good to learn. So what I'm curious is when I can see it, I can sense it, I can possibly talk to it, but I haven't figured out how to make it work with my hands.
Yeah, good. Guess what you're going to be doing for the next 2 years of your life? In here.
Can I add something? I was watching. I was watching while you were doing that. And I was fascinated too. I hope you don't mind me saying Joel. Joel looked so confident and clear with that movement and going down with his knee.
Yeah.
And he has got so much flexibility in his hamstrings and hips, obviously, that it was mainly more arm and leg, I think. Is that what you were thinking? And maybe a bit of pelvis. But so he was literally from like trunk up, his head was really quite fixed, like he wasn't using his head much. And I saw Margaret going over and putting her hands on his head, and I just saw this confused, like you had your eyes closed, but you had this really confused expression, like, what is she trying to get me to do? But that was really interesting just watching because he was so clear and so smooth and confident in that movement, even though he wasn't using that part of his body. It was almost like, why do I need to use that part? Or like, I'm doing this fine without you know, changing it kind of in a way. Do you know what I mean? And it just made me think, sometimes people, like, yes, we want people to use more of their bodies, but unless he had a problem with his neck or shoulders from doing that, then maybe there's nothing wrong with him using.
That's right. Well, Jenny yesterday was talking about what people want, what they need, and what they can accept. And somewhere in there, there's those three things need to be there. And if people are perfectly happy with their performance and you go in with a corrective thing, then they will react.
I don't want that.
Yeah, like what the fuck, really? It's the WTF, like, I don't want to know, huh? So that's why ATM is so fantastic, because people are working at their own pace at that want, need, accept thing is all working, because that's what, unless they're getting into the I've got to do this to please you stuff. Whereas FI, you've got to be a little bit more sensitive, as it were. Yeah.
Just on that note, something Julie had said, like right at the very first segment, was if you go somewhere they're not using, they don't really know about it, so you can't quite capture them there.
Yeah.
Like, so linking it to somewhere where they do know about, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that was probably partly my fault, is that I kind of invited you. I invited you to look at their blind spots. And you're right, actually, if you go straight to the part that's not being used, or whatever little diagnostic trick you've done in your head, you are kind of diagnosing in a way, which is confronting them right at their... Yeah, that's right. In other approaches is exactly what you want. Somebody over here. That's right. Yeah, so go with something that they know a bit about. Yeah, and that's a strategy. Build a bridge. Build a bridge. Build a bridge.
On that point, I imagine that would also be affected by what your target group are as well. Because if you think about elite sports performance, for instance, and it's the case of the enigma of Joel, and like he's already, his golf swing, for instance, is already good and he's already a pro or whatever, but there is something about the absence of the movement of the head, and you're able to actually illuminate that by this process, then that person's pursuit of excellence in that, in a way, is really going to drive them to want to incorporate that.
Maybe. And there's a bit of an enigma. I've never worked with elite sports people. When I first started in practice, I was in a practice with the physios in the practice were working with elite sports people, and I thought, oh, Susan's LD stuff would be great for them. Susan's personality is not great for elite sports people. But I talked to a lot of people about that, and Feldenkrais is perturbing. And people who are operating at that elite level are operating on a very fine margin of change and error. And if you change it even a little bit more, it can really upset them, and they will not thank you for it because that's their fine margin. And so there's been a few sort of cases that have hit the media where, elite sports person swears Feldenkrais is fantastic, but not nearly as much as you'd think. Because actually, a lot of them are getting those extra yards or extra whatever, yards, meters, whatever their metric is for success, probably at the expense of doing it in a way that's not very good for their system. This is my little theory. I don't know, you might have other theories about why. So it's not something that elite sports people necessarily want. Just putting it out there. You might find a way, and that would be great, because I don't think any of us are particularly cracked at working with elite sports people. Yeah.
What's there to do?
Yeah.
Curiosity.
Yeah, no, and you're right, and that's why my personality doesn't gel with, because I just don't get it. Like, I just think, what do you want to run around after a ball like that for? Like, why do you want to hit that ball further? Like, I don't get it. Like, I just don't have the genes to understand. No, I don't get any of it. I don't understand it. I don't, you can see by that's why I'm not the right personality. But I would be delighted for you guys to go and play with sporty ball people, runners and stuff. Musicians can be a little bit the same. Their technique is so finely tuned, they don't necessarily thank you for dicking around with it, unless they're in pain. Now, Fran and Stephen and a few people like that are really good to talk to about that, because they've got that nailed. They know how to talk to musicians and singers around their instruments.
I am
dancing.
Yeah, I go with them on tour, and I'm unable to change any of their technique because they're in performance mode and it's too dangerous. So if they injure themselves, or I can see that there's an injury coming, I can do a little bit to maybe, but I can't change the way that they move at all, because they've got themselves to such a level that it's innate.
Yeah.
And I can't interfere with innateness at that level because,
Yeah. And you think about, particularly classic dance, they don't want variation. They don't want options, right? They want to keep the line is the line, the trajectory is the trajectory, and it's like, don't mess with me. I've got it now. I've nailed it, and I'm going to grab it and hold on to it. Now, it's different dance is different, like work with different. Yeah, so that's right, stylized. They don't want variation. So think about, again, it's getting back to Jenny's thing. What do they want? What do they need? It is your lunchtime. You can keep asking me questions, but it's your lunchtime. Just putting it out there, just the choice. It's always a consequence for your choice. Okay. They've made their decision pretty clearly. So come back at 2. Have a lovely lunch. That was pretty definite group decision. They just